Audience discretion is advised due to potentially distressing and sensitive material. Lacey's parents, Clay and Sheila, were leaving on vacation for New Year's, but Lacey was gonna stay home. She was worried because she didn't know if they were gonna leave her food and water, and she couldn't ask them. She didn't know when they were coming back, or even if they were coming back at all. Lacey was nonverbal, but that wasn't why she was so worried. It was 'cause they hadn't taken care of her in such a long time. It felt like a lifetime. Lacey was not nonverbal and helpless from the very beginning. She knew what having a life to live, going to school and church, and having friends felt like. Maybe this even made things worse for her in her head. Maybe she remembered that she could do things for herself. She was born on November 25, 1985, and was a lively, intelligent, and fun-loving child. Sure, she was sometimes too immature for her age, but who isn't? She used to have a life. She had friends at school and she spent time with them. She went to church every weekend with her parents. She loved Disney movies and Disney characters and princesses and sent her friends links to her favorite shows. She played volleyball. She loved Mariah Carey and country music. Surely a weird combination, but she had interests like any other child, any other human. It was at 15 when she was first diagnosed with autism. She was initially diagnosed to have Asperger's, but that term isn't used anymore. She suffered from extreme social anxiety, which made her withdrawn. But when her parents talked about her, they put it as if she couldn't even communicate well and was better off staying at home and being homeschooled from then on. But that isn't what her friends thought. Sure, she was a little bit withdrawn and was a little different from her friends, but hey, all teenagers are different. Her friends didn't recognize the Lacey her parents talked about. They were like, hey, are we talking about the same Lacey here? 'Cause yes, she may go a little quiet sometimes, but she does have a social life and can make friends. They were totally confused. Lacey started receiving psychological treatment because of the issues her parents claimed she was developing. Like they said, she didn't want to leave the house and didn't want to go to school because she was being bullied relentlessly. But Lacey lived in the quiet town of Slaughter, Louisiana, where everyone knew each other and her parents were well respected in the town. They were the go-to people in the town. They offered to lend a hand to anyone with a problem and would do anything for anyone in town. The town, Slaughter, has a population of around 1,000 people with houses all spread out, giving the residents plenty of privacy. The point is, things couldn't have been that out of control for her parents. But anyway, at one point, Lacey just stopped showing up at her doctor's appointments. Clay and Sheila did visit her doctor once, telling him that she's refusing to leave the house. Apparently, her comfort zone was restricted to the house and she was getting worse. After a while, her comfort zone only meant the couch in the family living room. They also told the doctor that she was developing different phobias as a result of her sickness. For instance, she was now afraid of using the toilet because she once saw a snake in the toilet on TV. But her doctor wasn't the only one who stopped seeing Lacey. The last sighting of Lacey was by a neighbor who saw her when she was 21, carrying a pair of dumbbells and walking down the street like she usually did, but she vanished after that. Once, the neighbor even asked Clay how Lacey was doing after not seeing her for years. He'd assumed that, just like a lot of small-town teens, Lacey had grown older, moved to another city to study, maybe had met a guy and was married now with kids, and just couldn't find the time to visit her parents. But as reported, Clay just said, yes, she's fine, she still lives with us, and then quickly changed the subject. This had become a regular thing. It had happened so many times that people stopped talking about her. because whenever they did ask about her, Lacey's parents just kept it all short and jumped into another discussion, which indicated that they didn't even want to talk about it, so people just left it alone. I found this extremely weird because, as I previously said, this was a small town, and you always hear that people know all about each other's business in small towns because there's nowhere to hide. Even if the houses were all spread out and people had a lot of privacy, didn't people just drop by or something? Anyway, it is said by her parents that when she turned 24, her cognitive abilities and health declined even further, and this is actually what led to her not leaving the house at all. Then what happened in the 3 years in between? Why didn't she leave the house during those 3 years? But going back to the beginning of the case, her parents did leave for their vacation, meaning somewhere around the 1st of January. Remember this. In the early hours of January 3rd, 2022, around 2 a.m., emergency services received a frantic phone call from an obviously distressed parent who said that they had found their daughter on the couch unresponsive. When asked how old her daughter was, Sheila Fletcher provided three incorrect guesses about her own daughter's age, finally settling on 31. Lacey was 36 years old if you've done the math in your head already. When the emergency services first got on the scene, Clay Fletcher was standing emotionless by the door, and Sheila Fletcher had her head between her knees, shedding a tear or two. The police found this suspicious on the spot, but I'm guessing since we're talking about a small town and they all knew each other, put together with the fact that Lacey's parents were well known and respected, they didn't really register what had really happened there. The second they walked into the house, they were hit with an indescribable stench, like the smell of urine and excrement and death. They were directed to the family living room, and the smell only got worse. Lacey Fletcher was discovered on a brown couch. It felt really unordinary, not because she'd passed away on the couch, but because it was like the couch didn't go with the rest of the house. The house was organized and clean, really well kept, but the couch was torn. Lacey was lying in a hole inside the couch and all the foams were hanging out. This hole was so deep that the bottom of the couch was hanging low to the floor, and there was urine dripping from the couch onto the dirty floor. It was like no one was cleaning the couch or the surrounding area. Lacey's legs were folded beneath her, and her eyes and mouth were open wide. It was a gruesome scene to witness. She was naked from the waist down, and her shirt was pulled up exposing her chest. Upon further investigation after the coroner arrived on the scene, who was the doctor Lacey used to see, I might add, and who was told by Lacey's parents that she wasn't leaving the house but was not given much more information about her state, it was found that Lacey's skin was attached to the leather of the couch. Turns out Lacey had sat in the same spot on the couch for 12 years. She suffered from ulcers so extremely infected that maggots infested her wounds and were eating at her while she was still alive. There were maggots in her hair. There was urine and feces all around her, on the couch, under the couch, in her hair, in her ear, under her fingernails, and in her mouth. Her muscles had atrophied, and she couldn't even move, even though she was in horrible, excruciating pain. The space around the couch was so filthy, there were mouse droppings and maggots. Lacey had lost so much weight that her shirt was just hanging off her body. She was only 96 pounds. Her bones were literally exposed. Imagine the pain of having your bones exposed and maggots eating at you. If Lacey was still capable of feeling pain, this means that she was in indescribable pain and she couldn't utter a word because she was nonverbal. But even if she wasn't nonverbal, can you imagine seeing your daughter's bones exposed and maggots and feces all around her body and assuming she's doing fine, that she's not feeling any pain? Lacey was malnourished and her body had merged with the couch. Her hair, crawling with maggots, was so severely matted that the scalpel had to be used to cut it away from her head. When she was finally removed from the couch, her skin tore away from her bones. Disturbingly, the maggots that were consuming Lacey's decaying body were in a twisted way actually prolonging her life, because maggots only feed on dead and decomposing tissue. The autopsy report revealed even more harrowing details about the tragic and undignified circumstances of Lacey's death. The coroner, Dr. Bickham, identified sepsis as the official cause of her death. Although her time of death was recorded as 3:07 on January 3rd, he estimated that Lacey likely passed away 24 or 48 hours prior to what Sheila Fletcher had said. Bickham's examination uncovered that Lacey had endured starvation, a bone infection, COVID-19, and kidney failure. Her body was also riddled with stage 4 pressure ulcers, commonly known as bed sores, which were also infested with maggots. I don't know if you know much about bed sores, but they are known to be extremely painful and result from sitting or lying for extended periods of time. When a person sits or lies down for a long period of time without any movement, they put pressure on a certain part of their body and cut circulation. Now imagine what 12 years had done to her body. Lacey practically had no thighs or butt. For the same reason, Lacey's tailbone had flattened. Having witnessed this, the investigators reported that they couldn't eat or sleep for weeks afterwards due to the mental distress that the case had caused them.
Well, I walk in on the scene after Officer Dalton Corbin called me from Slaughter PD as I was dispatched. I arrived within 10 minutes. I arrived before Kate and ambulance there. When I got there, the officers, the first responders on scene were just in a daze. They were just standing there. They were on the outside. When I walked in, the house smelled of a stench of. It smelled like a sewer, a septic tank, and also a smell of death. I've never, I've never smelled that in my life. I've dealt with decomposed bodies. I've dealt with all sorts of death, degradation, whatever. Never experienced this in all of my career. When I walked through the door, to the right of me in the kitchen, Clay and Sheila Fletcher were standing there. Clay was standing there emotionless. The mom had her head between her knees. I saw a tear or two. To the left was the living room where Lacey was. I immediately went through there. I didn't stop and socialize with the parents. I went in there to where Lacey was. And I,
I know this has got to be hard for you. Even as a coroner, and even given what you have witnessed in your entire career, I read that
it
you
was tough.
struggled processing this. You struggled for a week afterwards. You cried for a week. You couldn't eat for a week. Is that true?
That's true. It still bothers me today. And like I said, I've seen every kind of death there is. I've seen elderly people die of natural causes. I've seen suicides, homicides. I've seen everything there is. Uh, I've never seen a homicide like this. I have never seen an individual, a human being, literally tortured and allowed to die while she is alive. I've never seen that in my life. I've seen decomposed bodies of someone that drowns. You find the body a week later. That's one thing, and they're decomposed. Lacey did not decompose. She rotted in her own body, in that hole, in that sewer, in the couch.
Well, this all took place on the 3rd of January, but Sheila Fletcher was first interviewed on the 18th of January, 15 days later. This I found extremely weird because even though they all probably knew each other, didn't they have questions? Like, how did Lacey end up like that? It's not like you can get to that state overnight. But let's get to the most disturbing part of the case. Yes, there are more disturbing things to come. When being interviewed, Sheila claimed that the main reason why this had happened to Lacey was that she herself refused to leave the couch. I mean, this could have been true in the very beginning of her mental decline, But what about afterwards when she could no longer get up or eat or speak? Wasn't she worried about her at that point? There are some online speculations that Lacey suffered from locked-in syndrome, which is a very real thing and means that the patient cannot move any part of their body but their eyes if they're lucky, and they are trapped inside their own head and body. Mind that the person is completely aware of their surroundings. They understand what you're saying, and in their heads they can even respond to you, but they cannot make any movements. This sounds terrifying, but even if Lacey did have locked-in syndrome, when would have enough been enough for the parents to take her to the hospital? I should also add here that when the parents originally visited Lacey's doctor without Lacey, he provided them with all the needed information about her condition and urged them to admit her to an institute where there were trained people to take care of her. But this never happened. They simply provided her with a portable toilet, wipes, ointments, and powder, and let her sit on the couch. When Lacey started soiling herself, they just placed towels around her so it would be easier for them to clean, which by the looks of it, they never did. Sheila also claimed that the night before Lacey died, she gave her half a sandwich and a bag of Cheetos to eat. Then she slept on a couch next to Lacey at around 10 p.m. and found her dead when she got up. But remember that Lacey was said to have been dead 24 to 48 hours prior to what Sheila had claimed, which means that she must have been dead by the time they got back from their vacation. Add to this the fact that autopsy reports showed that the only things in her stomach were feces and couch foam, which means that not only Sheila was lying to the investigators about what Lacey ate and when she died, but also Lacey was trying to eat her surroundings to try and move and maybe not be in so much pain. In addition, there were also scratch marks found on the couch, which again suggests that Lacey was trying to get up and get herself out of that situation. She was alone, in excruciating pain, and hungry. It was reported that the only thing within her reach was some sort of hard candy, and that is it. This all shows that Lacey's parents probably left her without food to go on vacation and found her dead when they got back and contemplated when to call the police for 24 to 48 hours. God knows if they even noticed she was dead within that period. There are many theories online about what happened to Lacey Fletcher, but none of them hold any water in our humble opinion. Clay Fletcher claims that Lacey was of legal age and they couldn't make any life decisions for her or on her behalf, and that's why she didn't continue with her doctor's appointments, didn't leave the house, and wasn't admitted to an institution. And he came to this conclusion because once he saw Lacey get dressed by herself and thought that she was capable of making decisions and doing stuff for herself. I have no clue how he failed to see the other 10 billion occasions and 4,379 days Lacey couldn't even sit up. No matter what the theory, I cannot fathom how on earth can you just sit and watch your only daughter go through this and do nothing for her, especially in such severe cases where you're damn sure you don't have what it takes to make her life easier. But there is also this theory that Lacey was restrained during her teens and early 20s, which could have resulted in muscle atrophy to the point where she could no longer move at all, and her parents just left her to rot to death on the family couch, which makes sense, but is painful to even think about restraining an autistic kid, any kid for that matter. To me, all there is to this is that Lacey died due to parental neglect, and there is no taking it back. There is no fixing it. Cause a literally innocent life was taken for no good reason. Lacey died cause the only two people she was exposed to didn't lift a finger to help her, and these were the only two people in the world who were supposed to love her to death. The district attorney, when discussing the case, stated, quote, you wouldn't treat your animals like that. If you had a horse that was in the stall behind your house and you go back there and the flesh is just gone from its body and you can see bones exposed, you wouldn't even treat your animals like that. End quote. The judge sentenced Clay 65 and Sheila 64 to 20 years in prison. and we believe they deserved way worse. Please leave any theories or comments you might have for us down below. We're really interested to know what you think about this case.